welcome to this episode of John's Motorcycle Rescue and Review. Today, I have another modern versus vintage comparison for you. And today we're looking at two bikes. The first is a 2015 Kawasaki Versys 1000 LT. The second bike we're going to be looking at is a 1982 Suzuki GS1100G. In 1982, the Suzuki GS1100G was arguably the best all-around U.J.M. that money could buy. It combined just a powerhouse 1100cc inline four-cylinder motor, Suzuki's legendary reliability, simplicity. It had excellent handling for what it was. It also had excellent brakes, and it had shaft drive, which is really a very low maintenance feature and one that I appreciate on that particular machine. Especially back in the 80s and the 70s, the shaft drive really did have a longevity advantage over the chain drive motorcycles. In 2015, Kawasaki introduced its Versys 1000 LT here in the US, and it is arguably the finest U.J.M., Universal Japanese Motorcycle, to come to the States in that year. The Kawasaki Versys 1000 won Bike of the Year, and it truly is just a great all-around motorcycle in the spirit of the U.J.M. It's a bike that's just going to do everything well, and I've covered it in a couple of videos, so I'm not going to go super in-depth, but it has the 1042cc inline four-cylinder motor from the Ninja 1000, and it's just a robust powerhouse of a motor. And then it's combined with really excellent riding suspension, excellent brakes. It's super nimble for the size of the bike. It has decent range. It's comfortable for multi-day, all-day trips on the road, and it just has a host of really nice features. What are these two bikes that were kind of their best in class for their year? What are they like to ride back to back? To be fair, I have done some pretty extensive upgrades to my 1982 Suzuki. I'm running steel braided brake lines, progressive springs in the front forks. I'm also running Emgo shocks in the rear, and I'm running a full Delcovic exhaust. Other than that though, it's really very close to stock. I did also change the handlebar on it. And this particular bike was actually the GK version, which came with a full fairing and full saddlebags and all of that. I did retain the chrome rack here because I can mount the top box anytime I want. And so if I'm running errands and need to pick up parts, that's just super handy. And I like the looks of the bike. It looks much cleaner without this rack on it, but it's so practical that I leave it on there. The Versys 1000 also comes with a set of hard bags that are really nice. They're quick release, and they don't. The lines on this bike aren't such that they spoil the lines when you have them on or off. In my mind, if this were just a comparison based on looks, I much prefer the clean, mechanical look of the Suzuki. I love bikes from that time period. I've put a little Emgo Cafe fairing on there, did the pinstriping on there to match the rest of the bike, and I really, I enjoy the looks of that. It's not the prettiest classic bike out there, but I think it's a handsome machine. And in comparison, this has function. It's very functional in the way that it has wind protection, but styling wise, I like the older look. But the question is, what are they like to ride? So I'm gonna suit up, I'm gonna grab my gear, I'll take you along on the ride, and we're gonna ride these back to back. We're gonna look at how they perform just in a kind of a regular setting, and then we'll also do a little bit more aggressive sport riding on each of them, and just see what the differences are. So I'm gonna grab my gear. Let's ride. I'm currently riding Suzuki's 1982 GS1100G, and this bike, of all my vintage bikes, is the one that I have set up most to my taste. I have the suspension set up fairly firmly. It rides kind of like a German sports sedan. It's
It isn't plush, it's taut and well controlled. This road is a little bit rougher than I like to ride on with this particular bike, just because of the way it's set up. Most roads, as long as the surface isn't too terribly bad, this bike actually rides really nice. It's all day comfortable. I got the MGO Magna wide handlebar on it, so it's a little bit of a reach to the bars, which I like. It keeps me down a little bit angled into the wind. It's more of a sport touring riding position, and this bike is nice. You can kind of tell it's sport touring roots. It's very nice to drive. If you're just driving it at the speed limit, it just cooperates. It doesn't buck or carry on or give you any kind of issues. Carburation on it is just flawless. Delivers over 40 miles to the gallon, so I've got a decent range on it. The way I've got the fairing set up, it's nice. At highway speeds, it does block a significant amount of wind. It keeps the wind off my chest, but I don't get wind noise over the top of it. I do get some vibration through the handlebars. The interesting thing is when I actually really get on it, the vibration, this thing just completely smooths out and the vibration goes away. But it's not an annoying vibration. Again, I can ride this bike all day long and be comfortable. I have it set up really for low speed handling. I generally ride this below 80 miles an hour, and so it's, you know, I love hitting back roads and kind of curvy back roads that have a lot of corners and elevation change are just really where I enjoy this the most. But it really does do any type of riding that you want. You can tell that the transmission, it's a 5-speed, but it'd be great to have a 6-speed. But it was designed when the speed limit was 55, and it'll just trundle all day. You know, you can do higher speeds on it too. It's just, it gets a little bit vibey if you're doing 75, 80 on the highway, that's for sure. And that sound is just so addictive. Love the sound of the exhaust. And it just delivers very smooth power. There's no flat spots in the power band, but the more you twist the throttle, the more it gives. Nice brakes. They really are up to today's standards. And this is what I have this bike set up to do. Oh man, that's fun. And really, what's rewarding to me about driving this bike is, you know, when I started off, this thing was a touring bike. The suspension was very soft, and it was not a performer really. And to take it, strip all the bags off and everything, and then update the performance on it to the point where, you know, most people don't think you can drive a classic bike aggressively like that in the corners. And you know, to have this set up where it's so nice. It really does handle tightly. Now with the skinny older tires, you can't generate the same kind of lean angles that you can with the modern bikes. But this thing, performance wise, you know, when I ride it aggressively, you know, I ride with people who've got a lot newer bikes, and they're just a little bit surprised, I think, as how capable it is. Again, this is not an ultimate speed machine. It's not a high-speed sweeper kind of bike, and that's where you really, if I'm doing higher speeds and, you know, higher speed corners and stuff, it can start to get a little bit wallowy. But the chassis is communicative. It tells me if I'm being too aggressive. If I push it a little bit too much, it just says, hey, back it off. And like the Versys, you know, it's not the kind of bike that pushes you to go fast, but it's the kind of bike that, you know, you can be comfortable as you're traveling to and from the twisty roads, and or commuting, just doing really whatever you want. A bike is a pleasant place to be. But then when you want to open it up, it really does have capability to back that up. And again, I think, you know, I've got a sense with this bike of owner involvement. It's really cool to take a vintage bike and kind of get the performance up to snuff. And, you know, to tune it, it took a lot of time to tune the suspension to the way that I wanted. And, you know, I tried a couple different shocks on it to get it set up the way I want it. But I'm really happy with it now, and I'm glad I took the time to do the project. And this is probably, of all my bikes, one that just gets ridden the most of my vintage bikes, this Suzuki, and I'll just take this out anytime. I had to clean quite a few bugs off of it to do the video shoot, because I tend to ride it and, you know, I don't polish it every time I come home. Another thing that I enjoy about this bike in particular, it is set up the way I want it. It's not as easy to drive necessarily as the Versys. It's not as, you know, when you go into the corners, it has a different feel with the skinnier older tires. It doesn't really, you know, I tend to kind of move around on the bike a little bit more, and so I'm not putting, even when I'm riding aggressively, I'm not putting a ton of lean angle in. With the sound that this bike makes and kind of the vibration that it has through the chassis and the handlebars and stuff, it feels like a hot rod. It doesn't, the nice thing is it doesn't hunt and pop, and, you know, I don't have to be going full throttle for it to be really nicely carbureted. So it's like a real world, well-tuned hot rod. I guess you call it like a resto mod, where things have been updated on it, but it still has that look, and it still has the actual feel of the vintage. And I have to admit, when I ride this bike, I do feel cool. But I'm looking forward right now to riding the Versys, seeing what I think of it compared back to back with this, one of my favorite vintage bikes. I am currently riding Kawasaki's 2015 Versys 1000 LT, and I'm riding this back to back with the GS1100G. And man, first thing I notice is just how roomy this cockpit is. I'm sitting up a little bit taller. The bar is closer to me. I don't have that little bit of lean like I do on the Suzuki. This engine is very smooth, and it feels like it's geared a little bit taller, although I'm not 100% sure. I'd have to look at it back to back. But wind protection is very nice. The transitions are nice, and due to the sizes of the more modern tires, this bike rolls from side to side very smoothly and easily in a different way than the Suzuki does. The Suzuki has the vintage tire sizes, and it just, the way that it corners is different. Throttle-wise, this bike requires a little bit less throttle travel to do the same thing. And when you do get on the throttle, it definitely feels like it picks up revs a little bit quicker. Ultimate power, I'm sure, on this bike is higher. And the high speed, stability, and ultimate grip of the tires on this bike is going to be higher than that on the Suzuki. This is quieter than the Suzuki. This doesn't have the exhaust on it, but I like when I do get on the gas on this bike, it actually does sound really nice. It has an exhaust note that you can hear, or maybe it's the intake that you're hearing when you get on the gas, but it does sound aggressive and it sounds nice. Yeah, just very easy, very confidence inspiring through these tight corners, even though there's gravel on this road. Very nice pickup out of the corners. And really on either bike, the nice thing is, yes, you can rev them out and they really pull strong up top, but one of the things I love about the 1000cc bikes and, you know, the big bikes is you do not have to, you don't have to rev them above about 5,000 RPM to generate just really nice speed. So I can drive them quickly, drive them even somewhat aggressively, without feeling like I'm abusing them. Low speed handling is very smooth, very nice. That was an easy transition. Clutch is super light on this bike, clutch pull, very nice engagement. One of the things that makes this particular bike so nice as a sport touring bike is how easily it does everything. And so just physically, the amount of effort that you're having to put into it, and even mentally, it's not a bike that's hard to be smooth on. It's pretty easy to be smooth on. And so it doesn't take up a lot of physical energy to drive, and it also doesn't take up a lot of mental energy. And so it just makes it something that's not a bike that's comfortable and not fatiguing, even if you're riding it for hours and hours and hours on end. And the way this thing handles, the lightness of it and the lightness in the transitions, I almost feel like I could just drive this bike with my fingertips. Just, it requires very minimal input through the bars to transition. Woo! Serious grunt out of the corners. Good brakes. Nice transition on and off throttle. That's fun. When you're riding these bikes aggressively back to back, again, the Kawasaki takes a little bit less effort and it's very, very capable. But the Suzuki really is rewarding to drive in a sporting fashion. It's really set up for that. It really kind of comes into its own, and I like it does take a little bit more skill. It's not as just super easy to drive as this bike, and I like that. I like the involvement that's there. And so when I drive the Suzuki fast, I have to say it's probably a little bit more rewarding to drive that hard. And I think I'm aware when I ride this bike, I'm kind of the weak link. You know, I can't really push this bike to its limits unless I would be on a track or something. And on the Suzuki, there are, you know, I can get it going quick enough that it says, you know, you might want to, you can kind of feel the bike moving around a little bit, and it gets to a point where it really doesn't want to go too much faster, and it lets you know that. And although the Suzuki has nice brakes, this really has nice brakes. And so it just requires, again, the Suzuki will stop pretty darn hard, but it just takes a little bit more effort. But the feel, I would say, ultimate feel really on both of these bikes is excellent through the brakes. You wouldn't think that of the old single piston calipers on that Suzuki and the smaller rotors, but it does give good brake feel. I think in the summer and the warmer weather, the Suzuki's going to be a little bit cooler place to ride. In the winter, this Versys is definitely going to be a nicer, warmer place to ride. It gets better wind protection. But, you know, the payoff is it's 70 degrees right now. I'm wearing just a leather jacket and jeans, and I'm already a little bit on the warm side on this Kawasaki, whereas it's perfect riding weather for that Suzuki. One of the high points of both the Suzuki GS1100 and this Versys, right now I'm kind of at the mercy speed-wise of the guy in front of me, but the bike is just not pressuring me to, you know, I don't feel the need to pass this guy. I'm not uncomfortable, my wrists don't hurt, and so I can ride the speed limit. I can ride, you know, I don't have to be riding it in an aggressive way to really enjoy it. And it's just super light handling, very comfortable. In riding this Versys, I'm just again reminded of how refined it is, how easy to drive, how non-taxing, and at the same time, you know, that motor just, man, every time you open the throttle, it just makes you smile. And you can just easily hustle it with a very high degree of confidence. Yeah, it's honestly super surprising to me how well these two bikes kind of stack up against each other.
All right, man, that was fun. That was a really interesting comparison between two of my favorite bikes. I just love the Versys 1000, and to me this Suzuki GS1100, it's just the reason that I love vintage bikes. It really is such a nice place to be, and really what makes a Suzuki my favorite vintage bike to ride is how easily it does everything. It really does have a very wide range of usability. You can actually do some pretty serious sport riding on it, and it's very rewarding, very fun, sounds great doing it. It's got great brakes, and you know, if the road is tight enough, I can keep pace with a lot more modern machines. Another thing that I like about the Suzuki, the GS1100, is it makes more pedestrian speeds feel special. It really does. You know, once you get above 80 miles an hour, you know, it'll get there very quickly, but then it just says, hey, you know, that's fast enough. You don't really need to go any faster. I know that nobody really, as I pass by, probably nobody cares, but I really feel cool on the Suzuki. I love the sound, I love the feel, and again, it's like driving an old hot rod for me. And you know, there's just something special about it. It kind of ticks those boxes for me, and I really enjoy it. And I've had it, it's the bike that I've had in the garage the longest. It's also, when I was in my early 20s, I did my first touring bike to cafe bike conversion on a GS1100G, and so it also has sentimental value. It wasn't this one, but it was a bike similar to this. The modern Versys, the thing that really strikes me, once again, about riding this bike is the ease with which it just does any type of riding. It's so easy and it's so low effort, even from a control standpoint. I mean, just super light clutch, very predictable throttle, the brakes are predictable, the transition, you could ride the bike and just, you know, put input in with your fingertips and it would do anything that you wanted it to do. It just really is that light and easy to ride, and it makes it fabulous. The additional wind protection that's afforded by the full fairing, I don't feel the speed as much, and then everything again is so easy. That motor is just it spins up very quickly and has all sorts of power. Kawasaki really outdid themselves with the Versys. I could honestly be satisfied for the rest of my life with just that bike in the garage. I guess to answer the question, yes, there's been a lot of progress between 1982 and 2015 as far as the capability of the bikes, the safety. One thing I didn't touch on, you know, this has traction control, it's got ABS. The Versys even has multiple power mode settings, and so you can, you know, ride in the rain with confidence and stuff. And even, you know, these older bias ply tires that are on the Suzuki, they actually do handle very well, but if you hit grooves or something like that, they're very quick to kind of get sucked into a groove, and they definitely tend to move around if you hit groove pavement more. The radials, I like the way the radials kind of ride and handle, and the smoothness, and even the tire sizes. I think they've got them, you know, down to a level where I really like the tire sizes on the Versys, and I think it handles well because of that. If I had to pick one to, you know, be my only bike, I would probably go with the Versys. You know, if I was just kind of nailed down long term, all that stuff, but it would be a really hard choice. I guarantee that the GS1100 will actually be in my garage long term, and you know, the Versys, the newer bikes I tend to go through pretty quickly, and I like them, but I also like a variety, like trying new stuff. And I know that when I get them, you know, I get them cleaned up, make them nice, do some videos, and then, you know, put them back on the market. But it is, you know, with a Versys, it's so good, it's tempting to just have that, you know, leave it in the garage, not sell it. But I'm sure you guys want more content, and so, you know, by moving the product and, you know, kind of keeping that revolving garage going, I'm able to make more videos and, you know, experience different bikes, and then also, you know, let you know kind of what they're like to ride. I know, you know, there are people who just, they only like the modern stuff, they don't have time for the vintage stuff, you know, it feels old, whatever. And I would say you can make it, you can bring it kind of up to date, and it's rewarding. It's rewarding to improve on something, and it's rewarding to have something that you kind of did yourself. It's a factor that I don't get when I ride the new stuff. Really, in every measurable performance category, the Versys is going to be above what the Suzuki is going to be, and that's, you know, that's time. That's, you know, time marches on, and the bikes have gotten better. It really is a superb machine. So let me know what you think in the comment section below. I hope you found this video informative and entertaining, and until next time, enjoy the ride.